Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
And good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 11th of June. As always, we really encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that a lot of different ways, whether that's on your phone, social media, on your computer at work, or maybe on your computer at home. Lots of different ways to get the forecast information as you head into the weekend. It keeps you safe. It keeps you informed of wet and stormy and snowy weather conditions, and certainly the fun stuff too, the little factoids that everybody likes to talk about. Is this hot year? Is this the cold year? Is the snowiest year? The windiest year, the whatever year. It's always on your social media, and we like to talk about it there. So start with the forecast at weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. The weather info line, you know that number by now, 800-472-0391. And no matter what I do, I'm always going to look over here at that number and read it. So as long as I'm here, that's the way it goes. Facebook, NWS Alaska. We just put some information there this afternoon about how warm it's going to be in Anchorage, but it really applies to all of south central and southwestern Alaska and even interior Alaska. It's going to get toasty this weekend, even as colder air is moving through. We've talked about that on Twitter today and on YouTube. You always get your daily afternoon map briefing there. You can go to YouTube and type in AKwx TV. You'll get this complete show after the forecast, a little bit later in the evening after our friends here at Alaska Public Media have had time to upload that to YouTube. So lots of different ways to get the information. Here's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Cold air on northwesterly winds coming through the interior. Yes, we've already seen that making it through the northwest in the mountains. We've seen snow. Thankfully, the winter storm warnings have subsided there. They've been canceled, and the same goes for the winter weather advisories around Denali. Those have been rescinded. In the meantime, though, there is still some snow falling up around the Brooks Range and points south and east. That is coming to a quick end, and cool air that follows it will also be short-lived. Behind that means more clearing, more sunshine, and a ridge of high pressures building in for a large part of the state, and that means a rapid warm-up for many locations. No matter where you're going this weekend, chances are temperatures are going up. It starts tomorrow and really starts to pick up as we get into Saturday and Sunday, so watch for those daytime high temperatures and really nighttime lows in some cases too to go up, up, and away. And that means for folks watching the ice pack in the Chukchi Sea, a lot of fast changes there and probably some probably some changes in the ice pack for the Beaufort Seacoast as well. A lot of opening up there and shifting around thanks to the southerly winds blowing across the region. So keep your eyes on the part of Alaska that matters to you. There's probably going to be some changes. Now, good news is we've had some good news about firefighting across the southwestern parts of Alaska in recent days. There is still fire danger across the central and eastern interior as conditions remain fairly dry. The bad news is that as we go into the weekend, we're going to shut down a lot of the precipitation chances. We're going to lose some of the sea breezes that start to stir up coastal showers and sometimes even thunderstorms. We're going to lose a lot of the moisture that has been sitting across the interior and interacting with weather boundaries that have started up showers across the region and slowly tamped down some of the hotter spots there across central and western parts of Alaska. So things aren't really improving dramatically across the state, but we're still watching for fire danger with high and extreme levels there noted across central and eastern parts of the interior. But that said, folks in Southwest and the fire teams there have done a great job. Now, as we look out across the western and northern parts of the Pacific, you'll notice another very elongated comma-shaped cloud structure here. That is the next stronger storm working up the North Pacific. This is heading into the central and western parts of the Bering. Out ahead of that, a very long, deep, southerly flow that's attached to the subtropics there. All this moisture, all this heat traveling all the way up into the Arctic will change the weather for a large part of Alaska going into the weekend. Watch the loop one more time here. We're still looking at more of a westerly flow coming into the YK Delta, Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, and the northwestern coast. Because of that, we're already getting a lot of drier and more stable air here. We call this kind of a flat ridge of high pressure. Well, this is the return flow, the stronger southerly flow coming in from the warmer sector of the atmosphere and on the planet. Now here's the visible satellite picture. Take a look at this. You see the Gulf. We've got a lot of clouds here in the morning, then a lot of that just vanishes as high pressure is starting to take charge of what's going on across the eastern Gulf. We have our flat ridge pushing in drier, kind of stable air across the Bering, a lot of fog, a lot of clouds, and some holes there in the Aleutians. Looks like a lot of places, just depending on which way the wind's blowing. We've got a little bit of a hole opening up there in the cloud cover, and you can certainly see that on the lee side of the Alaska Peninsula in the higher terrain. You can see that across, just hit and miss across the islands there. Just beautiful to watch. If you can watch that all day, and trust me, I would if I could. Now, as you look out across the central and western parts of the Yukon and the eastern interior, once again, you probably know what this is because I try to talk about it a lot. That ripply, kind of bumpy pattern in the visible satellite picture, that's upward moving air, that's cumulus clouds, that's showers, that's thunderstorms, and we're certainly seeing that develop across the Yukon, north of Dawson and east of Fairbanks. Colder air has been dropping south. We saw some buildup here across the Alaska Range today, certainly across the Kenai Peninsula. And we've seen a few showers across southeastern Alaska. That wasn't terribly widespread, it looked like, but a couple showers were popping up from time to time today. And then clouds are breaking up across the Kotzebue Sound region and around the Bering Strait today as that drier air continues to chip away at the extensive cloud cover that we've seen for a large part of the state. Even southwestern Alaska is starting to break up a little bit there. So impressive, and again, heading for drier and sunnier days across a large part of Alaska heading into the weekend. So high pressure sitting south of the Gulf. That's at 1,033 millibars. It's pretty impressive ridge right now. And you've got very light winds across most of southeast. A few showers there around Angoon. It looked like it was reporting some wet weather earlier today. Kodiak, south of the Kenai Peninsula, and westward into areas near Bristol Bay. Here's the colder air that was dropping southward today. Showers were moving up ahead of that earlier this afternoon. Some of those pretty quick downburst of rain, and then it would just move right on. That's what showers do. Showers and thunderstorms out across the central and western Yukon, and then there was snow up across the North Slope and in the eastern Brooks Range. Now, it looks like that was going to come down fairly hard and heavy for a little while. Turns out it wasn't that bad, and things really eased up fairly quickly. So good news there if you're trying to make inroads along the Dalton Highway. Out west, very stable conditions across the southern and central Bering Sea, around the Pribilofs and the Aleutians. And just on the southern part of your screen there, 1,032 millibars is the westward extension of that ridge. Now, just west of that is where all that southerly warm air is pushing hard into the western Bering Sea. Watch what happens tonight. Already, we get a couple waves of low pressure traveling northward and warmer air building in back behind that. So as that surges into the Bering, that will push more of that fog northward and start to stir up the atmosphere, a little more rising air thanks to heat. Of course, cold air is more dense than warmer air, and warmer air likes to rise like a hot air balloon. That's exactly what's going on the western side of that red line. Now, colder air will continue dropping southward, but this line is becoming harder and harder to find. So the colder air is going to start sneaking through the gaps and the passes there. But as long as it's intact, it will still give us a focus for more showers and a few thunderstorms. So that's still possible across the eastern Alaska Range. And we'll watch for some pockets of light rain today and tonight through southeastern Alaska. There still may be a few snow showers at elevation across the Brooks Range, but the really hard and heavy stuff probably will not be possible anymore. By early tomorrow morning, rain and snow showers will be found across some of the higher terrain, but a lot of that too will be winding down very quickly in the morning. Otherwise, VFR conditions should develop for many sections of the Alaska Range. So while I've painted in a lot of clouds, I've painted in some afternoon showers, a lot of the cloud cover here should improve as we go through Friday afternoon and into Saturday for sure. And that comes with a cost. That comes with a lot more heat. So temperatures tomorrow for many in the 50s and 60s. The next day, Saturday, probably 60s and 70s. And some will be pushing past that 80-degree mark, especially closer to the higher terrain where we've got a lot of dry air in place already in the morning. Afternoon showers for the higher terrain and southeast as well. Otherwise, fairly clear conditions there around the Gulf Coast, including Kodiak and south central. Southwestern Alaska, watch for some fog closer to the coast, but as that ridge of high pressure moves eastward a little bit more, you're going to get back into that southerly flow. So the winds will come up a little bit more. You'll probably have much warmer air. And eventually you'll find yourself back in the showers. But it looks like for most areas in southwestern Alaska, it's going to be a fairly nice day. You'll probably run into some fog in the morning again. That should burn off. High pressure across the interior, 1,033 millibars. That is tough stuff to break. And snow showers up across the Arctic coast and offshore for the most part. Rain will make its way up into the Bering Strait, Kotzebue Sound, the western part of the Seward Peninsula, including Nome perhaps, and Adak and Atka. Some gusty winds at times from the south and probably looking at some rain from time to time. The core of low pressure is weakening. That is still west and north of Kiska and Attu. A trough of low pressure will sit right across the inner waterways, southeastern Alaska. That may create some gusts from time to time. Same goes for areas around Prince William Sound and the Copper River Basin. So plan for that if you're driving your RV southward or eastward or whichever way you like to go. You might run into some winds across some of the favored gaps and passes, but all in all, conditions are trending toward a warmer and drier weekend for just about all of the mainland. And again, for some parts of southeast, you'll also experience slightly warmer weather. Now, for temperature-wise, 50s for most areas in the Panhandle today, 52 around Juneau, 47 in Sitka. Places like Angoon, a little bit cooler again, reporting some rainfall there. Ketchikan and Annette, both in the mid to upper 50s. Around Prince William Sound, mid-50s today. Valdez showed 57, 1 degree cooler in Cordova, 58 in Homer, and 56 for Kenai. Anchorage was showing 57, about the same in Wasilla and Palmer today. 53 in Talkeetna, expecting to reach past that 80-degree mark as we head through the weekend. 46 in Healy, 52 in Fort Greely, and 55 in Fairbanks, with 61 in Eagle and 63 degrees out around Northway. Very warm temperatures also expected there this weekend. 55 in Fort Yukon, 52 for Arctic Village, and if you look just to the west, it's not really hard to find where that colder air is. That is that leading edge of colder air dropping southward once again, and most likely we're talking about temperatures that'll stay in the 20s and 30s for Anaktuvuk Pass tonight. 37 today, 36 around Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse, 29 in Barrow. It was 38 in Kivalina, about the same there in Kotzebue as the ice continues to shrink. 45 a little bit further down the road toward Deering. 37 in Tin City, 42 in Nome. Unalakleet was showing 45. Galena was 48 degrees, and Ruby also fairly mild today. 48 around Grayling, and mid-50s for McGrath and also for Bethel, with Nunivak Island showing 46. St. Lawrence Island was 37. The Alaska Peninsula saw Bering Seacoast temperatures in the 40s, with most of the Pacific Coast back in the mid to upper 50s, including Sandpoint at 59 degrees, 51 in Kodiak, 40s for St. Paul and St. George, and mid to lower 40s out across the central and western chain. Now, overnight low temperatures will drop into the 30s and 40s for most of the interior. Fairly mild for southwest and the YK. Looks like lower to mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula. 47 in Kodiak, mid-40s for southeast. The Arctic coast in the 20s and 30s in the Aleutians, and the Pribilofs in the lower 40s. Looks like high temperatures tomorrow will start that warming process. So Friday is not the biggest warm day. That's probably going to be closer to Sunday, Monday, maybe even Tuesday. Upper 50s and lower 60s for most of the interior, the Yukon and the lower Yukon Valley, as well as the Kuskokwim Delta, closer to 60 around Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, lower 60s there. South Central, lower to mid-60s. Talkeetna could be pushing the mid-60s very easily. Upper 50s for a large part of southeast, even coastal areas in the mid-50s, with Juneau 57. Ketchikan and Annette in the upper 50s, probably closer to 60. Mid-40s around the Arctic coast. Looks like Kotzebue Sound temperatures will be in the 40s and 50s tomorrow. Nome looking at 46 and Bethel 62. Now, as we head around into aviation forecasting here, we're looking at MVFR conditions across the north coast, out across the west. Pockets of MVFR getting closer to Nome and Kivalina and Bristol Bay. Watch for areas of IFR, especially in the morning with the fog. And you'll see some of that improve during the day across the Bering, but by and large, central and western parts of the chain are going to see worse visibility and lower ceilings as we go through the weekend than anywhere else. Otherwise, MVFR conditions mainly in the morning again across the eastern Gulf, and we'll watch for some showers and thunderstorms mainly around the eastern Alaska Range, perhaps the eastern Copper River Basin, but generally along and east of the Alcan border. Here's your past conditions then. MVFR expected to improve through Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass tomorrow. Again, conditions should lift fairly quickly there in the morning if we see rain and snow in the morning at all. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect VFR through most of the day. Rainy Pass will likely start at MVFR, and the same goes for Windy Pass, but we should see improvements throughout your Friday there. Isabel Pass will stay MBFR through most of the day. We'll watch for a few showers and thunderstorms to develop during the afternoon. A lot more of that will probably be a little bit further east. Right now, Mentasta Pass looks to be VFR by late in the afternoon. Tonita Pass probably VFR through most of the day. Portage Pass should see significant improvements over recent weather, and Chilkoot and White Pass we also expect to see VFR conditions there mostly. Freezing levels, well, you can see the warm air is lifting northward again. Here's the 8,000-foot freezing line north of the Pribilofs and heading northward still toward the St. Matthew Island waters, the 10,000-foot freezing line. Also now north of the central Aleutians. As far as the north coast goes in the Brooks Range, here's the surface freezing line along the summits, and then here's the warm air aloft, 2,000 feet, and then 4,000 feet even further south than that. So a little bit of overrunning taking place there, as well as warmer air is winning aloft. Icing potential is pretty limited right now. The moisture's thinning out above 6,000 feet around Northway, westward toward Fort Greely. You'll find some light to perhaps isolated moderate, also north of the Bering Strait above 4,000 feet, and then way west, west of Adak and Atka above 12,000 feet. Probably watch for some icing potential there, but again, you're going to have to be pretty high up. Here's the jet stream, and if you've been tracking this for a couple days, you probably see the big change that's taking shape. Here is low pressure across the central and northern Pacific, high pressure across the west coast, another low pressure wave across the Pacific Northwest and southern parts of British Columbia, and then we have a ridge of high pressure pushing a lot of that warm air northward. So this is diving south, high pressure is working north, and that southerly flow is what's pushing heat back into Alaska for the weekend. You can already see it taking shape here at 9,000 feet. Light winds from the west and northwest over southeast Alaska, 10 to 15 knots there, 15 to 20 knots across most of the interior, and west and southwesterly winds starting to pick up 40, 50, even 55 knots across some of the central and western Bering at 9,000 feet. At 3,000 feet, a very similar condition here. High pressure just setting up south of Sand Point. A stronger southerly flow converging across the central Bering. 40 and 50 knot winds there, slowing down a little bit more around the Bering Strait, and then our ridge of high pressure really putting the brakes on the wind across the interior, 5 to 15 knots. North slope winds still running around 25 knots right over the Chukchi Seacoast, otherwise very slow winds for southeast. Turbulence is really going to focus out across the west with those faster moving winds. Some of that, of course, reaching occasional moderate, but most likely light chop there through the Bering Strait and through the central Aleutians, generally below 4,000 feet as we head into Friday. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll have an update on the sea ice edge around Alaska here in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
Daystar Day. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Plow Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, outreach astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. For nearly 40 years, Jack Horkheimer and now we have been encouraging you to celebrate Daystar Day. How do we do that?
Get up and outside an hour before dawn and experience a great star rise over our Earth's horizon. A star so huge we could fit over 1.25 million Earths inside it.
It sounds simple enough, but few people ever pay close enough attention to ever really experience the rising of the only star we can see in the daytime, a star we call the sun, a star we like to call our day star.
This year, we suggest you celebrate Daystar Day on the morning of the summer solstice, Sunday, June 21st. The exact moment of the summer solstice will be at 12:38 p.m. Eastern Time. But if June 21st doesn't work out, a few days before or after will work just as well.
Now, I'll bet that some of you are thinking that we're talking about a sunrise, and you'll say you've seen thousands of them. But even though you may think you've seen thousands of sunrises, very few people have ever taken the time to completely experience what's happening all around them as the sun rises, because sunrise involves a complex series of steps as night slowly turns into dawn and finally into day.
If you follow our simple instructions, you'll be amazed at what you've missed because you'll experience one of the grandest events in nature which most people ignore.
To participate, here is all you have to do. Simply get out at least 15 minutes before twilight begins while it's still dark out on the day you've chosen. And whether you live in the heart of the city or out in the country makes no difference, because it's not the sun itself you're going to observe, but the effects of sunrise on everything around you as your part of the world slowly turns from night into day.
It's better to be outside, but if not, just sit by an open window. Now for the rules, which are absolutely essential. No internet, no television, no doing your normal wake-up routine. All distractions must be eliminated.
Simply sit quietly inside or outside, and when you see the sky slowly start to brighten, look, listen, and feel what happens all around you, because a sunrise is more than visual. Watch the delicate interplay of light, color, and shadow.
But also listen, and you'll hear the sounds of our world and its creatures waking up. You'll feel the wind change, the temperature change, and much, much more.
If you do get out before dawn on the 21st, face the northeast horizon. That's where the sun will rise. The bright star is named Capella, and its light has been traveling for 42 years just to arrive this morning. Off to the right, you'll spot a tight little cluster of stars that sorta, kinda looks like a tiny little dinky dipper.
It wasn't that long ago that we were enjoying these stars in the western evening sky. Remember what they're called? That's right, the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters.
Between Capella and the Pleiades, if you have a dark enough sky, you'll see the Milky Way stretching up to a W-shaped pattern of stars called Cassiopeia.
Another thing to look for while you're waiting for the sun to rise is the Big Dipper. Look to the left toward the north and you'll see the dipper low on the horizon, at the bottom of its path around the North Star.
This will only work for those of you who live far enough north. James and the other folks in Florida are just out of luck.
Keep track of all the subtle changes you notice and record your observations on paper or into a voice recorder. Then read or listen to your observations a few days later. Believe me, if you've never done this before, you'll be absolutely amazed at what a star rise over a small planet can do for you.
Of course, remember to never look directly at the sun at any time. Only observe the effects of the sunrise on the world around you. I truly think that you'll gain a whole different perspective of your place on this planet and our planet's place in the universe.
Happy Daystar Day, my friends, and keep looking up.
This wildly, wonderfully colorful map is sea surface temperature, and the darker, bluer the colors are, the colder the water is, the greener and yellower the colors, the warmer the water is, and you can see temperatures here that are pushing 15 degrees C all the way working up through the Dixon entrance. Out across the west coast, though, of Alaska, you can see temperatures that are running around 5 degrees Celsius. A little bit darker purple indicates temperatures are very close to 0 or about 1 degree Celsius, so certainly capable of supporting ice, but a lot of this warmer water is starting to influence the temperatures of where the ice is, and as that changes quickly, we start to see changes like this. Here's the ice edge as analyzed by our Alaska Sea Ice Desk team, and a lot of open water here now north and west of Point Hope and Point Lay and Wainwright, and a lot of very thin ice off the coast of the Beaufort and also north and west of the Chukchi Seacoast. Also open water here east of Kaktovik. So if you are watching the ice pack, watch the website weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php, and again it has an interactive map that you can move around and find your spot in Alaska that you want to watch and do that fairly easily there. Here's a look at the weather now in southeastern Alaska for mariners. Stronger winds in the Lynn Canal. Watch for some gusts as we head into the weekend, especially for the inner waterways. For many around Stevens Passage, you're looking at a westerly flow on Friday, 15 knots down the Clarence Strait from the north and west with a 3-foot sea. Otherwise, westerlies coming ashore from 15 to 20 knots, 6 to 7, even 8-foot seas the further south you go. Heading into Saturday, the winds pick up from the north and west down the outer coast. 20 knots there, 5 to 6-foot seas all the way down the coast. Higher gusts probably across the central inner waterways there, with northerlies switching around in the Lynn Canal, 25 knots with a 5-foot sea. Northwesterlies coming in at 20 knots down the Clarence Strait with a 4-foot sea. For South Central, very light winds start your Friday, 10 knots and 2-foot seas on a variable wind inside Prince William Sound. Cook Inlet, more of a westerly flow coming across the Barrens, and light winds across the north and northwest as we head through Friday. Westerlies also across Kodiak at 15 knots. Those pick up a little bit more on Saturday to about 20 knots. Otherwise, north and northwesterly winds coming off the Kenai Peninsula through Prince William Sound and into the northern Gulf around 20 knots or so. 3 to 4-foot seas all areas, 5-foot seas around the Barrens on either side. Otherwise, pretty flat seas across the Cook Inlet from Calgon Island northward toward Turnagain Arm and the Knik Arm. And across Bristol Bay, a light wind from the west at 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas across the Bering Sea coast, 4 to 5 foot seas across the Pacific coast as well. More of a variable flow from Sand Point and westward, otherwise northwesterlies cutting into the northern Pacific. Winds are going to switch around a little bit more on Saturday. Still have a very light flow in from the west across Bristol Bay, southeasterlies across the Bering Sea coast at 15 knots. Westerlies on the Pacific coast, and we're talking about 3 to 4 foot seas. Might be a little bit more variable for the wind direction south of Sandpoint and King Cove on Saturday. For the Aleutians, you'll notice more of a southerly flow developing. Remember, we'll have a front right about in here. That's bringing in that southeasterly flow. Conditions may be wet and blustery at times with 5 to 8 foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, 4 to 8 foot seas for the Pacific with winds as strong as 30 to 35 knots, especially in the west. By Saturday, we'll see a little bit of a change as that front continues marching slowly to the east. Notice a little bit of a shift there south and west of Nikolsky, but by and large, that front isn't going to clear the central Aleutians as we head through the weekend. Again, a strong southerly flow continues to warm things up into the Bering Sea. For the west, south and westerly winds from St. Lawrence Island to Nunivak Island, more of a west flow across the Kuskokwim Delta, 15 knots with a 4 foot sea. Southerlies for the Pribilovs and the St. Matthew Island waters with 20 to 25 knots expected. By Saturday, southerly winds for all regions, exception a little bit more of a southwesterly flow across the Pribilovs, 20 knots there with a 10 foot sea, 4 foot seas closer to the coast, and 9 to 10 foot seas coming into St. Lawrence Island and north of Nunivak Island. For the Arctic coast, a westerly flow, might be a little blustery at times north of Kaktovik, otherwise 15 to 20 from the west. Southerlies from Barrow all the way down the Chukchi Sea coast to the Kotzebue Sound region at 15 to 25 knots. For Saturday, the winds pick up a little bit more. Look for a 20 to 30 knot wind across the Chukchi Sea coast down into the Kotzebue Sound area. You're looking at 6 to 8 foot seas at their highest, and a south and westerly flow for the Beaufort Sea coast about 15 to 20 knots. So all areas getting in on that warmer wind as well. Recapping tonight's weather, colder air is dropping southward. However, it's a short-lived burst with snow showers in the north and the possibility of a few thunderstorms across the Alcan border and the Copper River Basin. Light rainfall is possible for southeast with warmer air quickly building into the Bering Sea coast. Any showers across the interior will probably be short-lived as much warmer weather is setting in as we head into the weekend. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.